And now, I'm going to like to turn today's program over to Darren Cunningham. Darren, the floor is yours.
Thank you for joining. We've got a great topic and one that's increasingly relevant as you all look at how to get more value from your enterprise applications. And we're lucky to have some great speakers on board with us for this installment of our monthly Informatica Cloud webinar. Ron Lunassen, Head of Product Management from Informatica Cloud. Along with me, we also have Bob Brower from StrikeIron, who will be talking specifically about how StrikeIron is helping to enable better cloud data quality and partnering with Informatica Cloud. And we also have Gurney from our Address Doctor team speak to some specifics about address validation. So a lot to get through, and we want to really dive into the demo and show you some of the new capabilities. So let's jump right in. So just to set the stage is to talk through some of the typical data quality challenges. I think, I'm reaching to the choir here. A lot of you might be struggling with these. Clearly, it's a hot topic based on the registration for today's webinar. We produced the new contact validation service that's now part of Informatica Cloud. Our cloud-based data integration offering has been recognized 4 years in a row by Salesforce.com as the #1 data integration solution. We're going to some of the benefits and best practices and talk about some next steps. So today's agenda. So let's talk about this notion of data quality and data integration and how they're complementary. If you've been following this market for a long time, you've been following partners, been writing. There's really convergence happening here. I like this quote from Ted Friedman from Gartner. Organizations cannot be successful in their data integration work unless they have a strong focus on data quality built in. Not only about delivering stuff from here to there, you have to make sure you're delivering the right stuff. So I want to get to today, how can you deliver the right stuff? What does that mean, and what are some ways to do it? So a lot of you on today's call, and a lot of you have been working with Informatica Cloud for some time, have been very focused on CRM integration and really CRM adoption. I've done a lot of work over the last few years with Salesforce.com as a primary partner, and it's no secret that it's a garbage in, garbage out situation. I like this stat from Serious Decisions, the 10-100 rule. It takes $1 to verify a record as it's entered, $10 to cleanse and dedupe it, $100 if nothing is done, as the ramifications of mistakes are felt over and over again. So a lot of pain and a lot of need for data quality in the CRM market, and that's an obvious use case. And we'll talk a few other areas of need for data quality. So when we talk about data quality, it's a very broad topic. Informatica has a rich set of technologies for data quality, and from data analysis and discovery to parsing and matching, deduplication, monitoring, and reporting. Today's focus is really on contact validation, focus on getting the right address information, getting the right email and phone information through into your systems, and ensuring you have high quality programs as a result. So a lot of other areas that we could talk about today, but today's focus is really on the contact validation portion of data quality, and as that relates to cloud computing and Informatica Cloud specifically. Let's talk about some of the benefits of contact validation. And when we say contacts, some people who are using Salesforce have pinged us and said, do you mean that this doesn't work with leads? We call it contact validation because we're really broadening from addresses to also to emails to phone information. So trying to broaden the definition of validation, and we'll talk about that today. But we say it's around marketing effectiveness, making sure, especially for direct mail, as it relates to address information, making that you're sending the right information to people through your address validation processes. I personally got a junk mail that I probably shouldn't, and that's, I always think about the cost to the marketing organization when I put that in the recycle bin. Sales performance, operational excellence, customer satisfaction, and cost saving. So some of the key drivers and benefits for ensuring you have the right contact information in your systems. So let's just talk about some use cases before we bring in our distinguished experts. So if you think about contact validation by department, there's the IT side of the fence, which is looking to increase efficiency while reducing costs. There's in the warehouse, you want to charge customers for the correct shipping costs, and getting that wrong can have a huge impact on the bottom line. From a legal department perspective, ensuring regulatory compliance. Marketing person, I like sitting in the chair, kicking back. This person cares a lot about improving campaign effectiveness and ROI of the programs they're running. And then from customer service and support, making sure that you send service personnel on site and you're doing it the right way with the correct location, the right time, and ensuring overall customer success. So examples by department, a lot of examples by industry, and we can drill into these as you ask questions or as we get involved in the demonstration. I do want to remind people as we move into some of the specifics here that you can feel free to ask our panelists questions as we go along. And when Ron shows the demonstration, we often see a lot of questions coming in through the chat panels there as well. So what is this new contact validation service that we're introducing? If you are familiar with Informatica Cloud, and you can go learn about Informatica Cloud at informaticacloud.com, the exciting news for us is we're using a new app. We've been focused on data loading, data synchronization, and data replication. With our release, we extend our capabilities by delivering a new contact validation service. So that's what we're talking about in this, and what we're going to show in our demonstration. So what is Informatica Cloud? Our key value proposition is really, there's three key messages here to know if you're not familiar with Informatica Cloud, you're not currently using the service. The first is the simplicity of the user interface. So you'll see a demonstration, very easy to use, trying to deliver integration and now data quality to people that aren't necessarily the technologists or the people that are build the typical data integration work in their companies. We're also very focused on rapid deployment, so it is a true multi-tenant service. You can get up and running with a trial on our website, and you can get going very quickly in a way that you can't with traditional enterprise software approaches. And it is completely unified with the Informatica core platform. So easy reuse and sharing of the work you're doing in each environment, really giving you a path to extend and grow your deployment as your needs and complexity grows. The address validation service is broken into three key areas. The first, physical address validation. The second is email verification. And the third is a do not call registry from a phone perspective. Bring in Jason Gurney to talk a little bit about what it means from an address validation perspective. Jason?
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everyone. So before I get started, I just wanted to make a comment or a brief point about our Doctor. We're actually an Informatica company, and a lot of people don't know that. We were acquired by Informatica back in June of 2000, so we're an integral part of the cloud solution, as well as some of the Informatica's core platform offerings as well. Just a few items that I wanted to touch on here in regards to physical ad validation and what it really means. Basically what we're doing is we're verifying that an address is deliverable, so that to ensure that you can mail or ship a package to a physical address. In terms of some of the differentiators that Address Doctor has, we create addresses for 246 countries and territories, so that's a big differentiator for us in terms of the country coverage that we do offer. And part of that offering is determining if an address has a point of delivery. We also translate foreign addresses into Latin script as part of our process in verifying and correcting addresses. We can take unstructured address data, put that data, and make sure that they're in the correct address fields, and we to ensure that we're adhering to Postal Authority standards. And thus we correct mistaken or complete addresses and format them appropriately. We can also append a corrected address with a lat long or a geocode after correct address. And we're seeing a lot of that now in a number of different verticals, insurance, healthcare, hospitality, where customers want to get a better understanding or a better feel for the address that they are delivering to in terms of where it's located, if it's near a plain or near a river or on the side of a mountain, what have you. Just an enrichment, if you will, to an existing corrected address.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that overview. Let's also then bring in Bob Brower to talk about the email verification and phone capabilities, and maybe you can introduce StrikeIron as well, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. This is Bob Brower, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of StrikeIron. We're very excited that some of our capabilities have been embedded into the Informatica Cloud platform. Real-time data quality is one of our major focuses, so I think it's a great mutual fit. One of these capabilities is our email verification service that, for the most part, simply identifies whether or not an email address is valid, meaning it exists and can receive email. It does this real-time check without actually sending an email, so that's an important part. As you know, email is a great way to communicate with customers and prospects. However, not managing a database of email addresses for accuracy and being disabled or inactive email addresses from these lists can well be disastrous, quite frankly. Emails to contacts, whether it's users, account information, or any standard customer or prospect communication to invalid or disabled email addresses, if done frequently enough, can land you on an ISP aggregated spam list. This means that your important communications, working legitimate email addresses will land in the spam folder, and from that point forward, and will likely go on because they'll be in that folder, and people won't even realize they have them. How can this happen? People change their email addresses all the time. They leave companies, or they create temporary email addresses for certain purposes, or just simply start getting too much spam. I'm sure we all have seen that in our own inboxes. And so they create a new email address and disable the old one. As an example or a data point, it's estimated that 30% of people change their email addresses each year, meaning they get a new email address and likely the old one is disabled. We found through the feedback of our hundreds of customers that currently are employing this email validation capability, that failures and delivery bounces can be reduced by 25%. And with the integration into Informatica Cloud, the capability can automatically be enabled for a data migration job, and for a contact record that passes through the application. So let me spend a few seconds describing how it works. The technology utilizes several different online resources and many different algorithms to perform a real-time check on every email address. This means an email address is disabled this morning, check this afternoon will actually catch it. So it's important to note that this is not a database lookup. That data would quickly become stale. Instead, multiple algorithms and online resources are utilized for this real-time check. And these items have been incrementally improved and fine-tuned through the use of hundreds of customers to date since we produced this technology in 2004. Utilizing Informatica Cloud's new email verification is a great way to manage the accuracy of email addresses, and especially to avoid being blacklisted by spam filters and ISPs.
What about the Do Not Call registry? What's that all about? What do people know about that?
Yeah, another important capability of the contact validation service are checks to the National Do Not Call registry. So this is very important because each time a call is placed by an organization to a number that is on the federal Do Not Call list, there's a possibility to be fined $16,000 for each instance. And it can add up pretty quickly and be pretty devastating if several instances are cited. The agency already has taken action 83 times against many different organizations and has issued over $500 million in fines to date. So they are taking it pretty seriously. So what the service does within the Informatica Cloud is check each telephone number to identify it as non-callable. It not only checks the federal Do Not Call registry to achieve this, but it also the various state Do Not Call lists that are maintained by some states, as well as other factors that could identify a number as being non-callable, such as it being a mobile number, for example. That will identify it as a number that can't be called. So incorporating this telephone number checking into the Informatica Cloud, can not help you avoid fines, but it can also help optimize the time of a call center or a sales organization by not calling these numbers. is to maintain an organization's reputation, by not only avoiding any headlines that you might get into if you are cited by the FTC, but also angering the people that have taken the time to put themselves on these lists. Nobody wants to receive a call once they've gone through the effort of getting on this national list. One other important point, if you're familiar with using the Federal Do Not Call Registry currently in some fashion, then you know that in order to get access to the data, you have to obtain a subscription access number, otherwise known as a SAN number, from the FTC website. Once you obtain that number and the corresponding access to the Do Not Call data that you get is all completely managed by the Informatica cloud. So once you put it in there, you don't have to think about it again.
Okay, so we're getting some good questions coming in, and I wonder before we hand it over to Ron to dive into Informatica Cloud and the contact validation service, maybe I'll just bring a couple of questions your way, guys, and you can come over as Ron gets all set up here. This question is about zip codation. Does it handle zip code validation, and if yes, what fields are appended? That would be for Jason.
Yes, definitely handle zip code validation. I mean, that's just we manage the entire address. So first line, second line, third line of the address. So street, of course, locality, state, zip. So we manage all those aspects of an address.
Okay. Deliverable addresses, and how do you handle address locations that deal with general delivery areas when a full address or location is needed, like an E9, 11 type of address?
E11. That's a question. I honestly don't answer to that. Okay.
We might follow up on that one. David's got a couple of specific questions. I think the next one will come into Ron's demo because it's about geocoding. So if we hand it over to you to. Okay. Can you kind of take it through Informatica Cloud, give us a little bit of context, and then show us the new service?
Sure. So Ron Lenoson, and what I'm going to do for you guys today is actually walk you through a demo of the new contact validation service. Now, before I actually do that, just a quick slide that talks about the solution itself. So again, for you that aren't familiar, Informatica Cloud is a true cloud-based multi-tenant service. So simple tool browser, point out, put in your credentials, and you're logged into the service. Now, you first log in, you are prompted to download something that's called a secure agent. So it's a small downloadable component that actually performs the connectivity and all of the calls to both Address Doctor and to StrikeIron. So Secure Agent actually being something that you would download sitting behind your firewall, this is how you can actually use those really great features from both Address Doctor and StrikeIron against local on-premise data. I'll actually be demoing contact validation with Salesforce as a data source, but you can use it for local on-premise systems as well. And from the Secure Agent, we'll be able to connect, as I just said, to cloud-based systems as well as on-premise systems. All right, so let me go ahead and share desktop. All right, so quick shout, can you see my desktop?
Yep.
All right. Okay, the thing you'll see here is that I'm at the Informatica Cloud webpage, informaticacloud.com, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the link for login here. I'm in with my demo account. When I go to Data Services, you see we have a new service for contact validation. All right, so to actually show you how to use the service, let's take a look at some of the data that I'll actually be running through the service. Here I've already logged in to Salesforce.com, and I'm looking at the Contact tab. We take a look at the first record that I've got in my little demo data set. I've got it here for Darren. Now this record is fully complete, so we should go ahead and go through full validation. 100 Cardinal Way, Redwood City, California, 94063 is the real Informatica address. Darren's email address, and we've got a phone number here that will go and perform the do not call look up on. We'll go through properly. Now, if I look at my record, see I've got 100 Cardinal Way but I've put San Mateo, California, rather than Redwood City, California. Go ahead and see what the service does to that address. You also see with my email, I've actually typed this in, fat-fingered it, so it's rlunasen@informatica.cm instead of course, COM. So we'll see how the service deals with that. Lastly, the third record I've got here, this is a real interesting one. 235 East 42nd Avenue is actually not a correct address. 235 East 42nd Street is. And of course, it's in New York, not NY as the city. So we'll see what happens here. So let's go back to Informatica Cloud. Again, under the contact validation service, and I hit new, and what you see really is kind of the core benefit of Informatica Cloud. Nice, simple, easy to use. Got a really straightforward 6-step wizard to guide me through how to use these great calls from Address Doctor and StrikeIron. Now, one thing to note, again, both Address Doctor and StrikeIron have been around for quite a long time, so there are a whole bunch of customers already using these capabilities. The thing about it, though, is they are more technically bent. You have to understand how to make a web service call in order to use those features and functions. Now, the key benefit to the contact validation service is anybody can now use these great calls. What you have to do is click the boxes for I want to perform a postal address validation, if I want to append geocode information to that, whether I want to validate email addresses, and then do a check against the national do not call list. So just
quick question, geocoding. Which level of geocoding? Is it zip, census tract, rooftop, parcel level? Can you or Jason comment on that?
Yeah, it's actually interpolated rooftop.
I didn't know that. That's a good answer.
Okay. And actually, as you were going through, as Bob was talking, he was asking about a customer came up about spam traps. So for the email validation, do you have any way to clean spam traps?
So spam trap have kind of a broad definition. It depends on we have some checks. I mean, by definition, a spam trap will receive email addresses. What this service is checking to see if it's a valid or an invalid email address. So depending on how that service was set up, an individual can go out and set up an email address and use it as a spam trap. So those are a little bit tougher. So sometimes yes, but sometimes no. It can just be a challenge.
Lots of good questions come in. I'll try to hit them as we go through, so and not interrupt your flow too much, Ron. So back to you.
Sounds good, Darren. Okay, so here's step one. I've completed. I've given it a name so I can keep track of it and chosen the operations I want to perform. So on to step two, and this is where I identify, okay, what data do I want to go ahead and perform this validation on? Instead, we can connect to all sorts of things, both in the cloud and on-premise. Choose my demo Salesforce org and point contact object that I just showed you. All right, a preview of those 3 records. So step 3, optional step, I can add a data filter if I wanted to. So I only wanted to perform validation for records created this month or this year, or for a certain type of lead type or something along those lines. We have the ability to really focus on the records that we want to perform validation on. So step. And step 4, identify the fields that I want to perform the validation. Here you see for the postal addresses, we actually have different formats. So like Jason mentioned, we can do a very structured set of fields. No problem. You just map to the fields that have the house number, street number, postcode, country, etc. What I would say is the most typical thing about addresses. And we can also deal with what's known as unfielded or an unstructured set of data rows. You just put in whatever are your address fields, and the service will figure out what is the street, what's the city, what's the country, and so forth.
And Ron, verify addresses from sources other than CRM, and then what about other CRMs like Siebel? Yeah,
absolutely no problem. Anything that Informatica Cloud can connect to, we would be able to leverage the service with. And is once you connect to it in step 2, here in step 4, what you would see is the object for what system you're connecting to, and you just see the fields for the object that you choose. So it's really, what you see here is really what you would be able to get with the other systems we can connect to. All right, so I'll go ahead and just map my fields. So mailing city, country, postcode, state, and street. My email field is just the email field. And you really pull over whatever phone number field you want, but I'm just going to choose the standard phone field. All right, so 5. Now that you mapped the field you want to perform validation on, what do you do with it? So we will, by default, write these records off, validation results off to a flat file. And I'm going to go ahead and write this to a file called validated data. And I append the run date so I know that this ran, today at this time. If I wanted to, that's optional. And I can split, if I want to, into 2 different fields, one with validated records and one with the invalid records. So I'll go ahead and do that. And in for me means all 3 if post address is invalid, email is invalid, or a phone number is not, or is actually in the do not call registry. So by default, generate a file with the results and the core sets of fields that you've chosen in step 4, but you can also append additional fields to give the file, the result file, even more context. So again, let's say use the name and the row ID. And then 6, I can schedule this to run on a recurring basis. So this is the one-time thing. You can have this be part of an actual business process to keep your data clean and validated. I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we'll run it. Okay, what's happening now is going off and making a call to Salesforce to retrieve the records, those 3 for the contact row, and we're going to make the calls to Address Doctor and to StrikeIron, and we're going to write the results off into this local directory here on my machine. All right, so we see 2 files generated. Take just a second. Right, again, we're just going off, making a call to Salesforce, and then actually making those reference calls. As you can see, this is definitely a live demo.
Questions you can fill it with, Ron, but just let me know if you want to take some.
Not yet. Yep. Should be there in just a second. So you see that the 2 files were created, and you should see data populated there in just a second. All right, so we see the 2K, 3K, and the activity log shows that we processed all 3 rows. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what happened. So let's look at the validated data. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up in Excel. The very first set of fields are the actual fields that we passed through, so the mailing, information, the phone number, and so forth. See that 235 East 42nd Avenue, again, that should be street. You see here's the key field, result percentage. I have 85% confidence that shouldn't be 42nd Avenue, it should be E 42nd Street. So we've gone and shown you the correct field. For the record 100 Cardinal Way, Redwood City, again, that is correct, so it's showing at 100%. But you see that we will do things like we will do some standardization. So it's all caps here in the out field. Now, if we go and move over to the right, we'll see we've appended the G information, latitude and long. And you see that with the postal code, we've added the +4. So zip +4 is something that we just append to the data. Now we look at the email fields, and the email fields are valid. So email is valid, and if you take a look here after the phone number, we set these two phone numbers can be called, and they are not in the state DNC, nor are they in the national DNC. All right, so we see the name and the ID fields that we appended. Go ahead and take a look at the invalid file. Goes to write to the invalid files records that could not be verified from a standpoint were invalid email addresses or something that resided in the do not call list. The first thing I see here is that, again, I purposely said 100 Cardinal Way in Redwood. Yes, I put in San Mateo, California instead of Redwood City. And we see that the result percentage has got 95% confidence that, nope, it shouldn't be San Mateo. It should actually be Redwood City. So we take a look and we see that it's identified that this is the correct city. And we've added the +4 in the zip. Long are added, and the email address is not a valid email domain. Not only has it identified that it's a valid email address, it's specifically to me that it's not because of the fact that the valid domain, it's the valid domain as part of the extension. Here we see that the do not call, this phone is actually just fine. It's called, and it is not in the state or national DNC. All right, so straightforward. Again, it took me literally, I think, 30 seconds to build the connectivity to whatever data source I wanted to perform the validation on, hit the checkboxes, map the fields, bam, and we're up and running. All right, quick thing that I want to show with the Informatica Cloud Solution, it's not just the DNC, or not just a contact validation that's there. We have a host of other data synchronization, data integration capabilities available out in the cloud. Now, an example of some additional things that we can do here. Oftentimes, you want to put in a business process when you're dealing specifically with keep the context around data quality, where really what I'd like to be able to do is on a nightly basis, let's go ahead and perform validation against my data set. And let's go ahead and perform the contact validation. And here we've created something that's called a task flow. It's really a set of tasks that I'm running that are going to start at midnight. As soon as contact validation is done, I created a task, and I'll show you what this looks like. The task will take the valid file and go ahead and perform an update back into Salesforce. So it'll take the valid file, take the clean records, take the standardized records, and perform the update. So you can have an automated process to keep the valid stuff in sync, and you can have on a daily basis a data steward or somebody that understands the data to look at the invalid files to actually see what to do with it. All right, but let's take a look at.
We've got a number of questions. Let me want to take a couple.
Okay, let's finish this real fast, and I'll go ahead and take the questions. So the DQ to Salesforce solution that I just talked about. So what this would run is after we have the contact validation. Here, updating to my validated data file. I'm pointing to my Salesforce org, and I'm targeting the contact object. If I go back to step 1, I'm performing an update. So it'll update the records in place for the records that are valid. I'm not going to perform any sort of filter in step 3. Step 5, I'll be able to go off and perform my field mappings on how the data is going to move across. So getting ahead and with the ID field and updating with mailings the address fields. Now, one to note with the data synchronization service, the full-blown data integration capability that's available. Not only can I move over the records, if I needed to, I can actually transform the data records as well. So much you can do some function calls inside of Excel, you have the same capabilities here inside of Informatica Cloud. We have a whole set of the 120 functions, including my standard character functions, string, in string, data convert functions. You can perform if and decodes to perform conditional statements if you'd like. So lots of very powerful capabilities here. go ahead and shoot away with your questions.
A couple of questions on, so what if you have multiple address fields from source, address 1, address 2? Can you talk about that? And then maybe for you or Bob, can the service check or validate multiple phone numbers?
I think those are related questions. So if you have multiple address fields and multiple phone numbers, at the point with the way that we've created the service, you would need to create multiple contact validation tasks. So you would have to go through the wizard again, but the good news again is that you could do this very, very quickly. So this wouldn't take a lot of time. We are potentially looking for feedback here. So if it makes sense, go ahead and add X sets of mail fields, email fields, phone number fields. We could probably do that. So just looking for feedback. We wanted to keep the user interface relatively simple here with the first iteration. Okay.
There were some questions about performance. A lot of organizations have a large volume of addresses, and to validate. Can you talk about any estimates there, or what work's been done to ensure high performance?
Yeah, performance is definitely a key thing that we're focused on here. So, wanting to note the secure agent that I talked about, the engine that actually runs these tasks. It is based off of Informatica's core on-premise integration engine. So, it's enterprise class for sure. We're the market leader in enterprise data integration. So it's using the same exact engine, so it should be able to scale that any issue. With that being said, the calls we are making are web services based, so there is going to be some network latency that you do have to take into effect. But it has been designed to deal with a large amount of records. So we could share some of that information offline here as far as some of the tests that we've seen.
Okay, and scoring percentage, what is that based on?
It's off internal algorithms. It's on a scale of 0 to 100, and it's just a number that we created where people will say anything over either 80 or 85% is something that you would be pretty about accepting in an automated process. Some customers would even do things where maybe they'll make it as high as 90 or 95% as part of anything that's automated. So a lot, again, it's based off of an algorithm we created. It is something I would, as a best practice standpoint, go ahead before creating any sort of automation, to look at the records, how we've processed it, and then specifically see what you think your threshold should be internally.
Okay, great. Do one more, and there is a question about MDM that I want to get to towards the end as we go through some best practices. Question on new validation. Can a task begin from an existing one as a template and be modified? Sorry for you saying that, but I wanted to get you there on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go ahead and make a copy of any task, whether it's contact validation or any of the other services that we have. So I go ahead and just make a copy of that, and then you can use that as a starting point. Okay, great.
Anything else you wanted to highlight on the demo before we jump back to some next steps and best practices and bring in our experts again?
The only thing I'd like to highlight is, this was a very short demo, and I think that's the beauty of it. It really is straightforward, and I feel really happy and privileged to be able to provide these really powerful capabilities and almost make it available to anybody. I mean, I think that's the value of Informatica Cloud.
Okay, so let's switch back to the presentation and just go through some of the kind of the do-don'ts from an address and from an email perspective. So can you just switch us back to the slides? We'll just keep going. So thanks, Ron. Great overview. If you can just stick around for some questions that might come in as we go wrap up. So let's talk about address validation best practices. And so Jason, you're there all the time. Every day we're working with customers. What are do's and don'ts from your perspective?
It's good to be back. So I think that the big one I continue to hear from customers is they think that, I'm just going to cleanse my addresses one time and I'm going to be set. And that's not the case. The industry rule of thumb says that you're going to expect to see at least 10% degradation in addresses every year. So you need to continually be checking your addresses and validating addresses, throughout the course of the year as you continue to, manage them. So I would say that's the big one. In some other, in terms of best practices, do's, these kind of fall in line with how our engine manages addresses. And I touched on some of these in the previous slide, but number one is we do transliterate foreign addresses in Latin script before we parse them, and then of course we parse them, the unstructured addresses into proper address fields, so that we can then correct and verify an address. So if it is correct, we will verify it's correct. And then if it's not, of course, we'll do our best to correct it. We correct it, misspelled addresses, etc. Things that were just shown in the demo. And then we then format the address according to postal authority standards. So each country has their own postal authority, and we follow and adhere to all those standards in each specific country. And then lastly, we do the ability to enrich with geocodes, and we talked a little bit about that already as well with the Latin long capability. And as far as don'ts, I think the most important thing is that you have all the different departments managing addresses in the same way. So if you've got sales and marketing and finance, they're adhering to industry standards as well and managing addresses in the same way as opposed to a siloed approach.
Okay, great. And there's some questions again on the validation rules or any guidance there. One person was really looking closely and seeing that it looked like one record was 85% in the valid data set, and 95% are invalid. So how are those decisions made from an algorithm perspective?
The way that the service currently works right now is we've chosen 80% as the off. The reason why you saw the 95% record in the invalid file is I chose invalid could be either an address was invalid, the email is invalid, or the phone number was in the do not call list. So the reason it was in the invalid file was because of the email address with the domain being .cm instead of .com.
Okay, great.
If it weren't for that, it would have been in the valid file.
And Ron, quite a few questions about, do I need Informatica Cloud for this? Is something like this available with the core Informatica platform? Can you talk about the differences again, and how someone might purchase this and what it looks like without Informatica Cloud?
Yeah, sure. So again, both services from Address Doctor, Informatica, and StrikeIron can be called without using Informatica Cloud. So again, those web services are very well defined. Again, there's a whole host of customers that use both services without Informatica Cloud. Again, the value that Informatica Cloud provides is simple ease of use. Again, it is an absolute no-brainer. Anybody can go off and access that without any sort of programming skills. So that's the difference. If you are a programmer, somebody that is completely comfortable with web services, yes, you don't need Informatica Cloud. But if you're more of a business analyst, somebody that understands the data but doesn't necessarily want to know how to program, this is a great solution.
Yeah, if you have requirements that we would work with you to identify which solution makes the most sense, and do we have all the capabilities you need through the Informatica Cloud service. So that's a great follow-up for us. We can understand what you're trying to do and then determine what's the right fit from a solutions perspective. So talk, Bob, from an email perspective. There's been you've been chatting with folks about mobile numbers and other things about phone. What are some? We'll talk about that in a second, but also on email. What are some do's and don'ts from your perspective there?
Yeah, so in our experience working with customers, we have learned some good business practices around emailing and email verification. For emailing specifically, certainly suggest to use opt-ins for your email lists. There was a question earlier about spam traps. It's better to utilize opt-in lists when doing campaigns. Spam can be lucrative in the short term, but will definitely catch up to you in the long term. And then you want to collect as many email addresses as you can on your website, at point of sale kiosks if you have those, wherever you can to maximize future customer communications. These email addresses can be the seeds of future revenue, if those lists are managed properly and kept cleansed. I also suggest making sure you do the email validation at least quarterly. You don't want these lists to degrade over time, which is the way that people leave companies and the way email addresses can change. It's something that, since as you've seen, so easy to do. Important to keep these email lists cleaned. And then if you do purchase any lists to mail to, you know how many of those email addresses might already be no longer valid, so it's important to clean any purchase lists prior to mailing to them. And then you want to segment your list and send targeted emails as opposed to generalized mass emails. I think you'll get a much better responsiveness from your targets if you're sending relevant information. So I think that's an important thing to point out too. Of course, don't over-email any of these lists that you have. If people start getting too much email from you too frequently, you'll start getting a lot of remove requests, and you'll start losing your opt-in lists. It's really important to to save your bullets and manage the frequency at which you send emails to your various contacts. And then, as everybody knows, there's a lot of questionable sources of email address that have been added from all over the web. From who knows where in some cases. So we do your due diligence prior to put any of them to use. A lot of these might already have been flagged by spam, or they've been invalid for a while. So you certainly want to make sure that if you do utilize a purchase list, you employ some of these techniques as well.
Do not call.
Yeah, so on the do not call list, we recommend sending the addresses through about every 31 days to avoid fines. I'm pretty sure that's the FTC regulation. It was 90 days at one point, and I think they've changed it. We certainly suggest 31 days, every 30 days, just to make sure that you avoid these fines. Run any purchase lists again through the do not call registry prior to calling for a lot of those same reasons. And then you certainly want to segment your various calling campaigns, just like email. So you want to one thing I did want to point out, even if a number is on the do not call list, you still call them if you've had a business relationship with them in the past 18 months. That's something that you could denote if a number is on the list and you have an existing business relationship. There are some reasons as to why you still can call somebody that's on the list. So make sure you're aware of those. Those are all on the FTC site. And then somebody says, hey, look, stop calling me. You're also required to respect those cease and desist requests. So sure that those are kept track of as well, so you're not repeatedly calling somebody that can land you in some trouble as well. And then if you utilize common sense, anytime you're involved in a telephone communication campaign, don't have the messages sound like something analogous to a spammy email. And then, of course, don't overcall people or call at inconvenient times. You just want to think about how you would like to be called yourself. And I think you'll have long run, you'll have a much greater response. You utilize all these techniques to have a great foundation of data to work with, and follow some of these guidelines as well. It'll be a very effective way to go about this.
Great. So from what's in their perspective with Informatica Cloud and the contact validation service, we are taking advantage of the Address Doctor web service and going out to that. Now there are some additional features that may or may not be included in Informatica Cloud as it relates to addresses. So that's where we would want to talk to you about your specific requirements and see which solution makes most sense. The same for StrikeIron. We're leveraging their email and their do not call phone capabilities. There are some additional phone validation options that StrikeIron provides that are not yet currently built into the cloud service for Informatica. So it's this is a great first step for us, and we really are excited about the interest we've seen already from customers and from people who are new to Informatica around data quality. But I do also leave you with a thought. There was a question specifically, a couple of questions about master data management. And what we're seeing more and more with our customers is, step one, especially as it relates to cloud application data, is getting started with Informatica from a data integration perspective. Informatica Cloud in particular is really well suited for the cloud application integration use cases. So get started with an automated approach there. The second, then, think about your overall data quality strategy. And we think what we're now introducing with our contact validation service is a great first step. And Informatica, of course, has a very rich set of technologies, for broader data integration and broader data quality. Third is that we're really starting to talk to, and specifically more and more Salesforce.com customers actually, because so many of them are, and you are interested in the social enterprise message of how to really deliver this value proposition of a truly social enterprise. And it's really, Informatica has a whole host of technologies for master data management as well. So what's really exciting from our perspective is we're really, we've been recognized as the leader in each of these categories, and we want to work with you to understand your requirements, and then be able to propose, what is the right solution. Is it a pure Informatica Cloud service strategy or approach? Is it a need for, address doctor capabilities? Is it a need for broader master data management set of technologies? So there's really a spectrum here, and there's key for us on today's discussion is don't put this off. Go and get started with an Informatica Cloud trial. If you're using Informatica, if you're not, it's a great way to get in and roll up your sleeves and experience things very quickly. This is a true software as a service multi-tenant solution, so the try and buy feature is very much part of how we operate. So InformaticaCloud.com is where to go. And I do want to bring in everybody and thank everybody for attending. Lots of great questions. I might try to get a couple out there before we wrap up. Thank you for Ron, Jason, and Bob for participating in today's discussion. Ron, the question is, there's a few people asking. They're clearly familiar with Informatica Power Center. Can you talk about the worlds of coexistence, how Informatica Cloud is architected, and how it takes advantage of the Power Center technology?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you that understand Power Center, the DTM is what the agent is basically. We basically shrunk it down so that it can be downloadable. We decoupled it so that it could be multi-tenant, and that's what we're actually using. So again, that's the core crux of it all. If you want to have Informatica Cloud work with an installed version of Power Center, there's a couple of ways of doing that. The actual jobs themselves can be exported, so you can actually run them, export them from Informatica Cloud and run them in Power Center. You can also do the opposite. You can create jobs in Power Center and upload them into Informatica Cloud. And we also have the ability for the two to operate together, where we actually have some APIs around Informatica Cloud, so you can actually invoke Informatica Cloud as part of, let's say, a workflow inside of Power Center. So there's lots of different ways that we can interact between both environments.
And there's a question about for developers wanting to potentially OEM and test and prototype with Informatica Cloud. We've got an extensive portfolio of OEM partners, so that's the definite follow-up for us to talk about what you're looking to do in that regard. So let me bring in Bob. From a Strike Iron perspective, you guys have been partnering with Informatica for a long time in different ways. What gets you most excited about this extension of your Informatica partnership?
Well, for one, the ease of use, the breadth of solutions. Strike Iron services, as they are today, our customers integrate them into their applications and websites. But in this case, all already been done. So with the click of a button, you can leverage some of the real-time capabilities that we've made available, and just really solve some of these business problems much more quickly. I think it's easy to see, how easy it is to make this stuff happen for just build better data assets, in an organization.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Great, informative content and good demo from you, Ron, as always. So we'll be making this presentation available, posting it out on our YouTube channel, and sharing it with the attendees. So appreciate all of your questions, and we look forward to following up with you on some of your specific requirements and use cases. So that's today's webinar.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for all your questions and your participation. You may now disconnect. Please hold the line.